Sweet. We are live. Hey, everybody. My name is Dan Rodman. I'm the CEO at CoUnity, where we innovate in community, diving deep into community strategy. And don't even get me started just on all the different tangents I could go off on right away. But today we got a guest from Unlock Protocol. We're going to bring up here, Chris. And what an interesting, awesome human being. We had a great time hanging out at a few different venues at Denver, had all sorts of great conversations. It was really interesting hearing some of his backstory and some of his previous things before Unlock as well. So I'm really excited to dive deep into that with him. One thing I wanted to throw up here too is, and I've got just one screen here, is a little bit of a podcast agenda. I think every good meeting has a good agenda. So the agenda for this podcast is gonna meet Chris, get a little bit of his intro, his backstory, some of his previous company experience and what he's done in the past, and then into his current community, his current project, Unlock Protocol, and what he's doing there. And then we may zoom out a little bit into some current community trends. And I think we both really enjoyed diving deep into some strategy, systems, and tool talk. And if there's time for some questions at the end, we'll jump into that. So that's what the hour is going to look like. But I'm going to get Chris on up here right now. There we go. How are you doing, Chris?
Hey, Dan, thank you for having me. I am doing well. How are you doing?
Really good. Yeah. I think this is going to be a really fun conversation. Just, when I told you we were working on scaling our community strategy agency and we were looking to build more, you started to give me a lot of amazing insights and conversations around some of your past before Unlock. And so, I'm really curious to dive deeper into that and, jam with you a little bit on some of those community strategy conversations that we had. And I know you've just got all sorts of awesome little stories and things. I think one of the reasons we connected quite a bit is we're both, as we were just talking before the podcast here, we're both like adventurists. We like to nip off on little adventures, spend some time outdoors, touch grass and have some fun and whatnot. So yeah, I guess, I don't know where you want to start, but I'd love to hear, I guess, maybe your life before even Web3. What were you kind of doing? And then that community work, and then we can get our way to Unlock.
That sounds cool. So I was born, I was really, really, really small at that point. But then, got larger and been working on a number of different things. Originally, trained as a comp sci dev, first degree was in computer science, did a bunch of consulting for a while. After that, I went to grad school for a bit, and then really have had the incredibly good fortune to sort of weave around various emerging technologies as they have come online. So got to be part of Web 1 when that was a thing, and that was what actually brought me out to Silicon Valley in the late 90s. Was with a number of different startups. A couple did okay, a couple were big smoking craters up and down Highway 101, as startups often are as well. And really, have always had sort of this connection and human aspect of what technology could do, and really always saw that as critically important. When Web 2 was first starting in the early and mid 2000s, got into blogging, got into online communities really, really deeply at that time, and had the front row seat at the birth and building of one of the biggest blog networks on the planet that was reaching about 120 million women a month across all of their various channels through the kind of mid and late 2000s in the form of Blog Her, and also worked with a number of different agencies and organizations. So worked with an organization called Ants Eye View, and we were doing community and community strategy and social strategy, but more on the community side for really, really, really big brands. So globally overall, but a lot of them in the States. So Aruba Networks, which got acquired by HP, and H&R Block and folks like that, and really understanding where that intersection between humanity and community and technology, if you can really sort of figure out where things are at that saddle point between all those different groups, that's when really interesting and fun things happen. And sometimes it's slow. It is always, always, always messy. But from that, that's where kind of the richer, deeper types of interactions take place. So, that led me to GoDaddy. I was there heading up global content and community for about 6 years before and after the GoDaddy IPO, and then a couple other startups, and then ended up really getting bitten by the on-chain bug. Started dabbling with Bitcoin in 2013, 2014, and Ethereum in 2015 and 16. Got introduced to Julien Genestu, who's the CEO and founder at Unlock Labs, and was the prime mover behind creating Unlock Protocol itself. Julien and I got introduced in 2021, and it was one of those things like, how did we not meet before then? Because we realized we had like 8,000 mutuals. And so joined the project full time at the end of 2021. Started up looking after the marketing and externally facing things, and sort of evolved into the COO role at the beginning of this year. So it's been fun, but this concept of community really has been the thread that has run through all of those experiences.
Wow, way to bring us up to speed. That was a really interesting journey. Thanks for filling us in. I think
Sure.
I want to rewind a little bit, and there's something that I kind of thought a little bit about as you were saying it, even when it comes to like these big brands that you're working with, with AnsiView and the community strategy work. At some point, you almost like, I feel like companies used to just call that like work culture. It was like the work culture, employee
Yeah.
culture. And in the Web3 world, like I feel like you rarely kind of hear people talking about like, their culture. It really just becomes, maybe because it's decentralized, it becomes just that digital kind of community aspect. I'm curious to hear, like, what were some of like the things like on the day-to-day, or the strategies themselves, like detail wise, like what were some of the roads you were going down to improve like that kind of culture or that kind of community at these big brands? Like what was your typical kind of playbook look like when you would interview them and get into working with them? I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah. So the point of view of where one was coming from sort of drove that a lot. So you had sort of the internal culture of those organizations, and then you had sort of the external culture, which is kind of sort of the brand if you squint in some ways as well. And it really depended on, in those big organizations, where the project was being driven from in the organization, and sort of what the motivations were. So you had some organizations that were looking at it from a pure marketing standpoint. You had some other organizations that were looking at it from customer service, customer support. You had other ones where they realized that there was an external community that they didn't understand but desperately knew that they needed to, and there were one or two champions inside those big orgs that's like, okay, we have to figure out how to really change our corporate culture in such a way that we align with where our customers or prospective customers are. And so there are a lot of different aspects of that we can totally go into, but all of those things need to be understood in some way in order to really figure out where the strategies come from. But the thing it ultimately comes back down to with community and community strategy is, we are if we're thinking through the strategy and we're working on those problems, we are at best advisors and counselors to the organizations that are actually trying to get this stuff going. And in those cases, the organizations themselves are at best, if they're doing it right, they're party hosts, but they can't really change the culture. They can't drive the culture. That has to come organically from the community itself. And so thinking through what is, you were talking about the distinctions between kind of pre-on-chain and on-chain worlds. And on-chain, I mean, I think the term we hear the most now is vibes, and that's just kind of a different way of saying what is the thing, what is the culture, what's the motivation, what are the things that bring people to a particular place, be it IRL or somewhere on chain.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like you can tell when something's forced, when they're trying to put a narrative, right?
Yep.
And I think your point, when it comes led more from the community as a whole, it's definitely, it feels more like an ecosystem, organic. The first thing you said too, around the point of view, and then the name of the agency at the time, Ant's Eye View.
Yep.
Is that like the reason being, like kind of like the point of view aspect? I'm just
Oh,
curious.
100%. Yeah. Because we were, and a part of that was branding and positioning for ourselves as well. So you had all of these um, more traditional types of strategy firms that were coming in, the McKinseys and folks like that. They would come in and they would take a bird's eye view and really get a lay of the land. It's like, yeah, nope. You need to be on the ground. You need to have that ant's eye view of really, really understanding what's going on, and you have to get into the details. You have to do the work. You have to get your hands dirty, and you have to be immersed in the community, in the culture, in the vibe, in the conversations. Otherwise, as you were saying, I think especially over the last 5 to 15 years or so, folks' online bullshit detector has gotten so well tuned that if somebody is trying to force thing and trying to do something that isn't what they really feel just for brand reasons, people are going to be like, yeah, whatever, roll their eyes and go on to the next thing.
Yeah, no, it's totally true. And in my head, I'm thinking a lot of I've compared back and forth the differences between marketing and community work, and how, like with marketing, there's that awareness, and you're looking at your different kind of personas, your ICP, and driving that awareness. And then as soon as you,
Sorry, I have to interrupt because I can never hear that acronym without thinking of Insane Clown Posse, like ever. So now I'm
okay,
not like I want to get a Fago and I want to paint my face and do the thing.
well,
But go on.
now the next meeting, I'm gonna have someone's gonna pull this marketing pitch out there. They're gonna say ICP, and I'm just gonna like try and
Yep,
laugh.
exactly. So I've cursed you, so you're welcome.
So ideal customer profile. But yeah, just like in my opinion though, like the marketing aspect of doing that is, there's more standard routes around driving awareness, and there's already like a lot of, there's a lot of marketing agencies out there. When it comes to kind of what we're doing, community agency work, and driving that engagement and retention, it's like, now what kind of persona do we have here? What's our like kind of community persona? And what we found is, in helping frame that, like in one of our, like some of our first steps when we start talking with different clients, is like, to understand that ant's eye view, what we typically suggest at the beginning of all of our like proposals, in a way, is getting one-on-one interviews, pulling people separately one-on-one in different parts of like the business, and understanding like, how are they defining like the vision, the mission of the project? What's the roadmap for them look like? What's the biggest pain in their ass? Like, what's their day-to-day look like? And understanding that the perspective circle is really interesting, because even going all the way from the higher ups to like just like someone who's out there every day, lower level, maybe tier likewise in the company or organization, everyone's perspective is super valuable into framing what it looks like to, introduce new community initiatives or new tools or new strategies and whatnot. I'd be curious to hear, like, your thoughts on like, marketing versus community, retention versus awareness, and like, the interviewing of different stakeholders for getting that perspective.
Yeah, I mean the stakeholder perspective is super interesting, especially on even mechanically how those perspectives are sort of teased out of the organization. So you can do one-on-one types of interviews. We used to do a lot of more big facilitated session types of things, and there were all sorts of different almost process things that we had to bring in to make it work, because otherwise what we saw early on was, if you had all those stakeholders from execs down to frontline folks in the room, everyone would start deferring to the highest paid person in the room's perspective, and everybody else would shut up. And it's like, okay, this is pointless. And so
Mm.
being able to do things like have processes where when we do brainstorms, have folks sort of do work almost independently, and we had just blizzards of post-it notes and things like that, and we would put them all up on the wall, and they would not be attributed to various folks. So it was everybody looking at the ideas as opposed to having that idea necessarily tied to the person, and then having the group go. There was one thing we always used. It's like, okay, if there were 15 ideas out there, everybody would get 5 little red dots or blue dots or whatever color dot we had that day, and let them vote on that, and you would sort of see where the natural clusters of the good ideas were. And that's where some of those distinctions between the different functional areas in the organization would get teased out as well. So some of those would come, and if the motivations again were the more traditional top of funnel awareness kind of marketing folks, you would see those bubble up. If they were from the sales or bottom of the funnel revenue kind of side thing, we would see those bubble up. We would see ones come up from customer support and customer care as well. The other thing that would be really interesting, and this is a fun thing to do even today, is if you go to an organization's website and you look at their website and look how the website is set up, like 7, 8, 9 times out of 10, I can tell you the exact org structure of the organization, like the layout of the org structure based on how the website is set up, because every functional area wants to have their own tab on that website. And so you can actually see some of these things that actually, end up being manifested in technology that are coming out of some of the softer human, interpersonal, sometimes political conversations that are happening in the organizations as well.
Interesting, like the breadcrumbs of how they want
Yep,
to set up.
exactly.
Yeah, and it makes sense to me too, the aspect of course, people are going to have different priorities, of what they see as important for the division or for the direction of the company, whether they're in sales versus marketing versus operations and whatnot. They're all going to have their own separate kind of goals and agendas. And I think one of the things that really helps when you really understand each of those perspectives is where like the 2-for-1s, where is like the low hanging fruit of we can make this easier for you, and it also helps your other co-department easier for you as well, right? So I think that's really interesting. I like the aspect of bringing people together into a workshop. It was funny though, as soon as you mentioned being anonymous with the stickies, my just super ingrained Web3 mind is zero knowledge proofs, keep it
Yeah,
anonymous.
exactly. No, that's exactly it. Yeah. But I mean, those are the places where we can judge the ideas, based on their merits, or at least look at them based on, the ideas themselves and the merits themselves, as opposed to, who was the person that put them up there. So yeah, you've got, zero knowledge proof types of things. There is no reason why a lot of the stuff that's happening on chain, we can't tie some of those same kind of concepts into.
Totally. No, that's really interesting. And actually, I even know Karma Gap, which is a platform that Pocket Network, which is a client we're working with, they're integrating aspects of reviewing other grants through there, and you can do it in an anonymous perspective, which is great. So you can give kind of constructive feedback on another grant without getting into the politics of someone talking about another grant, and then they might think, well, I don't really want to leave a review about someone else's grant because they're also a voter and I'm a voter, and they're gonna maybe not vote for me if I leave a review about something that could have been done better and all that type of thing. At the end of the day, to your point, it's you want the best ideas, the best constructive feedback, regardless of who it comes from or what level they're at. So interesting to kind of look at integrating those tools for that, right?
Yeah, there was a really cool model I saw. This was a bunch of years ago out of Wharton. There's a professor there named Kevin Werbach, who is brilliant and awesome and a great human being. And he did a massive online course on, I think it was on gamification. And
Hmm.
I think at the outset, I forget what the number is, but it was something ridiculous, like 60,000 people went through this course over time, but it had actual live homework and assignments and things like that. And so how does, a single professor course manage 60,000 folks who were signed up? And that same process that you're just talking about here with Pocket Network, the way they had things set up was anytime there was an assignment, there was the assignment and then sort of the rubric of how that assignment would be graded. And what you as a class participant agreed to is you would do your assignment, and as part of that you would also grade or apply the rubric to 5 other assignments from across the class. And so that way it was a really interesting model that with the size of the class could actually scale this process and keep in that sort of anonymity, but also cross-checking a little bit of QA that was driven based on human reviews, which was pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. And it's kind of interesting that you mentioned that. I was just on a call earlier. We were talking about how people need to hold the same standards for like grants programs. A lot of these different, Web3 projects have a couple different grants programs you can apply for now. And so then as a developer, as a builder, you're like, well, which grants program should I apply for? Which one gives me the most chance of succeeding? Because I don't know how these are being kind of evaluated. Like to your point, the rubric, if you have the same evaluation metrics and rubric, then you can apply that at scale more and have it be more kind of equitable and fair amongst all members.
Yeah.
You brought up something though it's a little bit of a tangent. I'd love to hear how much it was.
Tangents are good. Tangents are good.
Great. Love tangents. Around gamification, and for me, it's like it can be a two-edged sword, and it's definitely a lot of power and amazing things with gamification. I love it, and we do all sorts of things with it to incentivize community members to move further down the funnel and contribute to different things and move their own way up a leaderboard and whatnot and gain points and all those sorts of things. I'd be curious to hear from your perspective, your thoughts on gamification itself, how much you kind of implemented it with some of the bigger brands and whatnot, and what did that look like?
Well, shit, how much time do we have? Because I have some thoughts. There are at least 3 kind of interconnected models that I have seen. So one is, you mentioned things like leaderboards. And so first, and let's tie this back into marketing, let's tie this back into community management, let's tie this back into motivations. There are different types of humans. We're all mammals, but we're also super different in a lot of the kind of psychological ways as well. And there was a really interesting study that was done, and this was probably in the 70s, by a guy named Bartle, Bartle. And he looked at the first big multiplayer online games in the communities that developed because you had these games that people were showing up for day in and day out. And this was back in, kind of green screen, type in text-based community type of games. And he discovered, and this seems to still hang together pretty well, that there were kind of 4 different types of players in those worlds. And he mapped them to the different suits in a deck of cards. So you had one group who were the achievers or the diamonds, and they were the ones who cared about leaderboards. They cared about getting the most points, getting the highest score, winning. When you look at, if you ever saw Glenn Ross, like the Alec Baldwin character was like the prototypical achiever in that kind of world. So you have some folks who are going to be motivated by those things. And if you think about the gamification, some of the main tools, you've got points, you got leaderboards, you got badges. Those folks are going to be really motivated by trying to get higher on the leaderboard. You've got other folks who they call the spades. They are really the explorers. They are the ones who they want to dig into everything. They want to go on every side quest. They want to explore every new thing that comes in. They want to discover every Easter egg that the community has to offer. And so those folks, they're not going to be motivated by the same types of things that the achievers are. And so thinking about how do you build into the overall experience these things that are just really interesting for the natively curious type of folks. You got other folks who are the hearts or the socializers. They're there. They don't care about the leaderboard. They don't care about the Easter eggs. They just want to hang out with cool people. They want to just hang out and be social and be in those, that sort of electronic third space with other folks who they're vibing with for whatever reason. And when we talk about culture and those types of more emotional types of things, that's what we get into. And so those folks are going to be motivated by a completely different set of things than the other two. And then the last group, which is usually, thankfully, only a small fraction of most communities, but they're always there. Call them either the clubs or the killers. They're the trolls. They're the ones, and they get their enjoyment out of sort of exhibiting power over other people in the community. And so thinking about sort of those different four personas, then from there, then you can get into how do you do those sorts of gamification design types of things. There's a model by a guy named Gabe Zickerman that has status, access, power, and stuff. And interestingly, in communities, the things that oftentimes are the most motivating are those status things, the things that are at the top. And amusingly, those usually cost nothing or close to nothing for the organization to actually bestow on folks. So does it cost a brand any more to put somebody at the top of the leaderboard than in position 7? It's just a number either on chain or in a database somewhere. I mean, it's just that. And thinking through, building those models of what's the status that you can give to folks, what are the access to things you can give them, what are the different types of power you can give them. And then really at the bottom of that pyramid is the stuff, the swag. And unless it is tied to status or what's very closely tied to status, which is identity, then the stuff really isn't typically that motivating. So that's sort of the short synopsis, but I could definitely rant on all of those things for like another 3 hours.
No, they're super fun and it's really interesting. And I would say too, like I've seen sometimes like toxic aspects where gamification gets taken like too far.
Yeah.
When it, especially, tying it in with marketing is obviously a good strategy a lot of time, but in some aspects, I saw a referral strategy. I was looking at the Discord for Grass, which is a decentralized AI platform. Really cool project. But I think they may have gone a little overboard on like their referral points program thing. And their Discord grew to like 750,000 members. And like,
of which 17 were actual humans.
Well, you go in there's a lot of humans, but they're just like spamming like their referral codes. It's like there's no conversation about the technology or anything like that happening, or questions or support. It's like so much like use my code type of thing, and I invite you, you invite me, and that type of aspect. And so like looking at like how you put up boundaries around those things to like funnel it in the right way and like safeguards and whatnot. And then finally too, like the one quote that popped in my head around the status, chart. I think there's a quote, I'm blanking on who said it, but like men will do more for medals than for, money a lot of time.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I might be butchering that quote a little bit, but it's something around that. And it's totally true on how you can introduce these systems and strategies that they don't have a high, cost to the brand per se on what they actually have to give up. It's just a system, and like in the Discord and a community, a lot of time it's just like a role, and maybe it's even a temporary role, and just to flex that badge on your role and be like, I did it, I got the role, it means a lot. And I can see how those are the the diamonds in your example, right? Which I think I've never heard that framework before, Bartle. I'm definitely gonna have to look it up and check it out. That's a really good synopsis of it, so I appreciate it.
Totally. Yeah. It's one of those things that it's like all maps, all maps are wrong, and some of them are useful. And this is this is one of those. It's there are always going to be exceptions to it, but
Mhm.
as far as a way to just sort of start structuring the thinking and then getting into obviously the specifics of any particular case, oftentimes a reasonable place to start.
Yeah, totally. Well, cool. Honestly, like we kind of went a little wide already on community strategy stuff. Let's bring it back into Unlock for a bit, and then let's
Yep.
go back wide again after. So Unlock, I'd love to hear, what's the most exciting thing to you about Unlock Protocol? What kind of drew you in? What would you want to tell people watching about Unlock Protocol? What's your kind of pitch around it? Where do you see the future of it? All about it.
Totally. So, I mean, Unlock itself, there is Unlock Protocol, which is the technology itself, the hard tech. There's Unlock Labs, which is the organization that I work for and signs the front of my checks. And then there is the Unlock DAO, which actually is the community that governs the protocol and the technology itself. So these three interconnected entities. Unlock Protocol is a protocol for memberships and subscriptions and bringing those things on chain. So anything that is a membership or feels like a membership. So when you think about a membership to a club, when you think about a subscription to an online magazine or online journal or news site, subscription is a membership that happens to renew once a month, and the members get access to stuff, non-members don't. Things like event tickets are memberships as well. And we'll talk a bunch more about Bitcoin Pizza Day, which is happening today. A ticket is a membership to be at a particular place on a particular date at a particular time for a particular duration. Certifications and credentials are memberships as well. So some folks might be watching this on LinkedIn. All of those certifications and credentials that folks have in their profiles, a number of those are actually powered by Unlock. We're working with a group of digital asset advisors or financial planners who are advising on digital assets. They actually built a whole on-chain curriculum and credentialing system that is all based on Unlock as well. And so the technology brings all of those things that used to be in distinct databases trapped within a particular organization or entity, brings those things on chain. And so memberships now, if I have a membership which is technically represented by an NFT for a particular period of time, and one of the interesting things about Unlock's protocol and the way it's built is that those memberships can expire after 30 days or a year or a week if you're doing a trial membership types of things. And really that kind of time-based aspect is an interesting angle. And so all of these things are on chain now. So for example, all the folks who went to the Pizza DAO event at ETH Denver or went to Edge City at ETH Denver, any of those types of tickets, if they were done as an on-chain membership, now the organizers know very easily who went to those various types of events, but also other folks can tap into that connection as well. And so if somebody else wanted to say, hey, I want to know the folks who were at Edge City at ETH Denver and be able to connect up with them, those are the types of things that we can do. And so we're taking this concept of a membership that used to be just trapped in an individual database and wasn't portable. I couldn't take my membership somewhere else. I had to get permission, if I could get it out at all, from some centralized organization. All of these things are open and distributed now. And so Unlock Labs is the core team that originally built that protocol and now have a number of different types of apps that tap into that open and open source infrastructure. So again, things like events ticketing, things like memberships and subscriptions and certifications. We have different apps that we have built that are themselves also open source, but are built on top of this open source platform. And we've got the Unlock DAO, which really is the soul of the community. And these are individuals, there are 4,000 plus members of the Unlock DAO globally. And those are the folks who actually have the power to vote and change the technical underpinnings of the protocol. So we can have ideas now as Unlock Labs, but any changes to the protocol have to get voted on by members of the community and then implemented through an on-chain voting process, goes through, and it's very, very much the close to pure kind of Web3 ethos of you put a proposal up on chain, it gets voted on. If it passes, then it automatically goes through and is ratified and implemented. And there's not anything, that any individual person can do. It truly is tapping into that, permissionless and open ethos of Web3.
Wow. No, that's really cool. I wrote down a few things that I'd love to kind of get into. I think the main reason too on why I'm bullish on everything you guys are doing at Unlock is around when you just think about the ecosystem really zoomed out from a macro perspective, from a brand's point of view. Their infrastructure cost to set up like a membership program in a centralized way, where they need servers, they need to like, especially if they're thinking about going international, there's just all these things that they have to tap into to do, versus if they look at doing something on chain and the interoperability that comes with the wallet and the infrastructure cost difference in having that in a decentralized manner versus a centralized manner, I think it's just huge. And I think it's like starting slowly. I think, the wheels are turning, and that's going to start to become more and more of the norm. Like these decentralized systems have a lot better efficiencies and costs, et cetera. And I think, obviously powering a lot of that interconnected capability will be, Unlock with some of their events and things for them to track events. You guys have laid the ground for the memberships for certain aspects of things they could so easily just tap into. Like the rails are there, right? Is that kind of like, what would you say around the?
No, that's exactly it. And any of those slices of use cases all become interoperable as well. So, if you're looking at it through, let's say you're looking at it just through the loyalty lens, just off the top of my head, I can think of 3 different loyalty platforms that sit on top of blockchains that are using Unlock Protocol as part of their loyalty program. So the folks over at Chasm are doing that. There's one out of Italy called You Collect Me that's doing that. There's one out of Japan called Beyond Club. And all of those have built their interface and sort of their view into blockchains using their own, what's called proprietary platform. But because everything is interoperable, everything is open, they can tap into these things around memberships and subscriptions that are out there for anybody to use. And they also do become interoperable as well. So we have those kinds of aspects. We also have really incredibly cool things that I wouldn't have thought of until we got deeply into this. So for example, we did all of the on-chain ticketing for FarCon a couple of weeks ago down in Venice Beach, California. So there are, let's call it 600 folks who were there. We ended up, Unlock Labs team ended up basically, spinning up a Telegram group between Unlock Labs and there's a team at Icebreaker. And the Icebreaker folks were doing they're kind of sort of working towards an on-chain way to tap into folks, different parts of their personas, their different profiles on LinkedIn and, X and Warpcast and the like. But with honestly not a whole lot of work, we're able to take this concept of the ticket and the membership of the, the Farcaster or FarCon community that Unlock was powering. Icebreaker has some very cool technology. I don't know if you'll see this on StreamYard or not, but I mean, they're, the badge for FarCon had a tiny little NFC chip in it. And so if you met anyone, you could just tap, your phone on their badge and it would bring up all of their different profiles. Anytime you went to a side event, if you checked in at that side event, then the NFT that was powered by Unlock was visually changing based on the different events that you went to and such, and actually evolving over the course of the long weekend. And so the other thing that really comes in is this concept of, the on-chain buzzword is composability. It's being able to, all of us, build these really cool, interesting, and sometimes very specific Lego bricks, but be able to plug them together in new and creative different ways. And again, between Unlock Labs and Icebreaker, over the course of like a week, we were able to get these two worlds integrated so that one was handling what it was best at, the other was handling what it was best at, and evolving over time. And now I saw Jack from Icebreaker saying, by the way, since this stuff is on chain, these badges are good forever. So I could take this to the next conference, and the next time you and I run into each other in person, if we tap, we would be able, if we wanted to memorialize that on chain, that we have this connection at events that spans several years and many time zones. We would be able to do that.
That's really cool. It makes me think a little bit, and one of the notes I wrote down is like, now there's this on-chain tracking aspect, right? Like wallet data, right? And how valuable that is from a perspective of being able to analyze, those wallets and like everything public blockchain. It's all, out there. And so you can start to see this, I use a lot of analytics tools like Cookie3. They have some great on-chain, off-chain analytics tooling, and seeing like the alternate like coins that, as a whole, like everyone who holds this token, these are the other projects that they hold, these are the dApps they use. And a big one is like, these are the chains that they're on. Like they're mostly on Base now. So if you're looking at like, migrating some tokens to an L2, this is where you should provide more liquidity and whatnot. But the question I have for you that I'm really curious about actually is around the space of data collection, right? And so the wallet's kind of the new email. So a little bit like email versus wallet on event side of things. And what do you see? Do you see hesitation with people connecting wallet? Do you see more email than wallet? I know it obviously would depend a lot per situation, but also from your perspective, like doing community strategy work as well, the usefulness of using that data. And my perspective of it is for the greater good, right? Like if you're taking data and then using it as aggregate insights to create a better experience for the full community and help grow everything too, like that's great. If you're taking people's data and then selling it on some sketchy site, I mean, that's just like
bad.
Yep. I don't know. What's your take on all the data collection and email versus wallet and that space?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think on the data collection itself, one of the sort of aha things that I had a few weeks ago was, to your point, on-chain is sort of, the wallet is sort of kind of the new set of cookies, if you will, if you squint a little bit, with the huge difference of it is no longer opaque. So people are like, if you do everything on chain, folks are going to be able to track you. So newsflash, Google and Meta have far greater dossiers on you than you can possibly imagine. And so now it is at least transparent. You know what is out there. And you as an individual have some level of control over that. I mean, you can always, you can't necessarily get rid of the transaction histories, but if you've got something in your wallet, you can always punt it out of there if you don't like that. And that's for the folks who are a little bit more savvy in on-chain, architectures and the like. What we are seeing in practice is it really depends on the audience. And so we're working, for example, with two different amazing publishing platforms. So we're working one with organization called Trustless Media. That's Zach Guzman's organization. They have two different media properties. One is called Coinage, which is phenomenal at coinage.media. The other is called Best Dish Ever. And it's this incredible on-chain native foodie network. And in both of those cases, they've really abstracted away a lot of the technical bits around wallets and things like that. But if you are a member and if you're a card holding, NFT holding member of the community, then you can help vote on editorial and things like that. And so they've done that. The other really interesting on-chain publication that we've been working with is one called Dirt. I think it's dirt.fyi. If you went to dirt.fyi right now, you could sign up with just an email. And again, we talk about, we're talking about composability a couple of moments ago. They have used Privy as really the new version of what we used to do with, use your email to, to get access to the site. If, in the time it is taking me to utter this sentence, if you went to dirt.fyi and you said sign up, you would be able to type in your email and you would have an account on Dirt, and you would have no idea that it is using all the on-chain rails because it's just primarily email based. I know in their case in particular, a majority of the folks who are doing things are using email to get started. And we're seeing this with the folks over at Coinbase as well. They're really starting to spin up both their wallet as a service type of infrastructure, as well as some of the smart wallet things that are using passkeys and the like, which are going to make it even easier. So I think there's going to be a continuum. You're going to have a majority of the folks, they're just trying to solve their problem. They literally could not care less about the technology. And they're going to go to a website. They're going to use one of these kind of embedded wallet types of solutions. They're going to get access to the stuff that they need and want. And it may or may not be correlated with what they're doing on other sites, but it is able to be correlated if the user wants to tie those things together or eject things into a proper wallet and such. So we're seeing a lot of those types of things. On the event side, what we see is a lot of folks similarly just want to, they want their ticket to the event. They just want the problem solved. And so one of the things that we built at Unlock Labs is if somebody signs up for an event, they can have the ticket dropped into their wallet. And that's, again, for the folks who are a little bit more on-chain native. For a majority of the folks, they just put in their email address. What they do is they get an email, and that email has a QR code in there. We're spinning up basically a really lightweight account, a really lightweight wallet for them that is, again, 100% on-chain. But to solve the problem they have, it's just, I just want to share the QR code and connect at the event. And then, if basically in the core of the technology right now, that QR code, you can scan it with any smartphone and it'll tell you if it's a valid ticket or not. If you want to get more sophisticated, you can actually check it in on chain using either tools from Unlock, or we're partnered with folks like Token Proof to do some of that scanning as well. And again, that composability aspect is so much easier. We don't need to mess around with getting API keys and worrying about, building something and then having, Twitter turn off all the APIs for all the devs after a year and a half, just, for example.
Yeah. Token Proof too. I mean, they've got a really slick product. I remember even using it over a year ago, and it was a great experience. And it was through an Adidas Into the Metaverse event at Art Basel in Miami.
Yep.
You had to be holding a certain, there's a couple of different Adidas NFTs you had to be holding. And the way that they, would check that, verify it, and then constantly be checking it in that wallet and changing the QR code.
Yeah.
It was some pretty slick technology, like really great. And honestly,
it's dead simple. Yeah, it's dead simple. I mean, all you need to do now is, once you've spun up the membership, you just need you can get the address for the smart contract, which is literally a copy. You paste that into Token Proof, and it takes advantage of all those things like the evolving QR codes.
Totally, really interesting. I think we hit the data collection pretty good. That was a really good tangent. That was a good one. The other point that you mentioned a little, you briefly kind of went through it, but I think it's really important for Web3 communities that are growing, that are new, is you see this structure quite a bit of a protocol team that builds the product, et cetera. Then you've got the foundation, or for like the labs team, that's more like the employees, the ones who cut the checks, the people who work at the company. And then you've got the DAO, right? And the journey of that DAO, I'm curious, how did that look for Unlock Protocol to move from kind of a more centralized DAO to a more decentralized DAO? Like, because obviously there's a lot of power that comes with introducing a DAO. To be able to make those changes to the protocol and be able to do that, you have to, I feel like it's a very, in my mind, an analogy of it, it's like raising like a dog or something, right? And you have to be very good about training it and like about the good ways to like behave and not behave. And there's a certain point where you can take it off leash, but there's like, for quite a while you got to keep him on leash because you don't know what he's going to do if he runs up to somebody.
Yeah.
Point, you can kind of take the DAO off the leash, burn the access to the wallet, and let them take over. But anyways, I'd love to hear how'd that journey go?
Yeah, it's it is an ever evolving one, and what we have seen, depending on the sort of vibe of the space itself at any particular time, that really changes the conversations that are happening in the community. So, we've seen a couple times over the last couple of years, there will always be these moments where all of a sudden, don't know why, but like the speculators will show up, and it's like, not here for you. And just through the conversations that we have and being really clear, really consistent, try to sort of refocus the conversation on the things that matter for shepherding and stewarding this kind of core technology forward. And so it is community engagement 101. The labs team we try to be very, very specific in those conversations when the DAO is having a conversation of sort of which hat we are wearing. Is this as a labs member? Okay. And so also as based on that, there's some things that we can do, some things we can't do, but ultimately it's the DAO's thing. And like any other community, I'm guessing, when you're working with clients, you take them through that sort of, pyramid of engagement. You've got, 1% of the folks who are like super, super, super engaged, and maybe another 10% who are kind of sort of engaged. And the other 90% are lurkers. And this is, same sort of thing. We've got a core set of folks who have organically come in over the duration of the DAO's existence, and they are super engaged. And again, they are driven very intrinsically. They are not the ones who are driven by those sort of extrinsic reward types of things. And we see that as a good thing. There are folks in the community who show up, they say, oh, we've got these cool tools. What kind of stuff can we do with them that help individuals in the space at large, but also helps the project? So for example, the DAO got a grant from Arbitrum about a year ago now, and the DAO hadn't done anything with that. So it was sitting on this cache of ARB tokens. So one of the folks in the community who we originally met as a hackathon participant like 2 years ago at New York, who has become an ambassador for Unlock Protocol, phenomenal human by the name of Lana. She's like, so we've got this. I'm also involved in a lot of the Gitcoin grant kind of stuff. So what if we ran a grants round and we took some of those ARB tokens and used that as the grants that were given out for folks who build or use Unlock Protocol? We're like, well, I mean, we can't, we're not going to vote because we're labs, but it kind of sounds like an awesome idea. And so we see these organic creative ideas coming up with the tools that are there. And so it's really, a lot of the community management 101 types of things. It's amplifying and encouraging the wonderful community that is there. It's trying to make sure that folks that are more disruptive, the community norms are set up in such a way that those folks can't totally derail the good vibes in the community. And it's really, it is a very, very organic process.
No, it makes a lot of sense. And in my mind too, I kind of see it a little bit like that funnel aspect of them kind of coming in and being aware of what Unlock does. And then it just triggers that, intrinsic passion, like motivation, but like passion too, for like, wow, like this is really cool technology. I really like what this does. And as a result, it's like, how can I contribute, some of my time to this? I'm sure a lot of people in that DAO, as probably a lot of people in a lot of DAOs, have their main, day jobs of things.
Yep.
They come home and they like, okay, like what can I help with a little bit? Or like, what are the ideas that we might have? Or let's hop on a call and jam on something. So yeah, really, really interesting that, to be able to spread really wide initially. As you mentioned, 90% of people are typically just kind of viewing and in and out, think it's cool, but don't have time, or just they're not like deep in enough to like actually like engage. But to your point, like community manager one-on-one in some senses is like, if you can create, themes or safe spaces or just places where people are like finally comfortable enough to be like, like I'm going to say something, like I've got something to contribute here. And they do. And then to get that, like, that recognition per se, more so than anything else, that really can go a long ways, I think, to then slowly grooming them and bringing them down, closer to being more contributions, more like leading things and starting to guide other people down as well then, right?
Yep. And that 90% of the folks who aren't, they're definitely not actively engaging, and they might not even be lightly engaging, but they're watching. They are always watching. They are seeing what's going on. And so when the inevitable conversations between the active DAO members sometimes heat up, it's like, okay, let's just be really thoughtful about that, because there's a whole set of folks who are in the gallery, if you will, who are watching this go back and forth. And so where are the places where a gentle nudge or a gentle word might be advised to bring things back on track or to cool tempers a little bit, because nobody wants to be part of a community where the folks are jerks. And so making sure that as those active conversations are happening, that the folks who are there but aren't necessarily piping up, making sure that what they're seeing as the interactions between the community members are things that are aligned with the ethos of the community itself.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Obviously, some people behind a keyboard can get a little out of control when they're just in their own situation and there's no direct, live aspect.
It's road rage, but like 1,000 times more.
Right. I've seen some interesting conversations and things that blow my mind. But I guess, getting away from some of the ethos and emotional aspects of community and whatnot, I'd love to hear, even in your everyday life, with CO at Unlock and whatnot, what are some kind of tools that have got you kind of amped up lately, or like anything in the AI space that you're leveraging a lot, or just in general software systems that you're like, not as many people might know about this, and it's, been really useful for me. I know you love to explore. We're also both members in Jump. Shout out to Jump. Lots of different cool tools and things shared through there for, marketers looking into the future of things. So yeah, I'm curious, you got any off the top of your mind, or any that you've?
Yeah, I mean, the ones that I've played the most with have been the ones that are probably the most widely recognized ones. So I've played with, a mess of the things that have come out of the OpenAI stack and Midjourney. I probably am now probably 60-40, maybe 70-30 between Perplexity and Google for doing online research and the like. I really like some of the places where, and I'm a AI nerd from way back, and so I see a lot of the LLM based things that are out now as really useful general purpose tools. And again, that's sort of my viewpoint. I see them as the sort of emotional successor to the spreadsheet. The spreadsheet is a generic tool that you can do all sorts of different things with. And I see the LLMs and the related types of things as a similar sort of thing. It's a tool that I can use to do the stuff I was doing already faster, or sometimes do things that I just, there weren't enough hours in a lifetime to be able to do it, and now can do it in a much faster time. So, everything from, bouncing ideas off. It's like, here are 3 ideas. Give me 10 more that I didn't think of that are like this, or for, sketching out concepts and the like. Those are the things that I'm probably using the most right now that are new, that were not in the bag of tricks a year ago. When we get into some of the, the community management things, I'm loving the various types of tools that are coming out, both from um, different types of agencies and software companies that give you a little bit of insight into community action and engagement and such. And then I still use Dune a ton, and a lot of that I think is because one of the languages I learned way back when was SQL. So fortunately and luckily super fluent in that, so I can spin up a Dune dashboard in like seconds to give me visualization and graphs of the stuff that's going to help me make better business decisions. So for example, with Bitcoin Pizza Day, which we're doing with PizzaDAO today, we did all the ticketing for that. I just looked this morning, and there are like 120 cities that spun up on base over yep, right there. And so if you look through and you look through the list of the various cities that are going to be just below that, yeah. So those dots are all real, but all of those cities there, if you just mouse over those, you'll probably see almost all of those are actually on chain and powered by Unlock, but have spun up a bunch of Dune dashboards that give us some visibility into what are the biggest events, what are the ones, like I think the New Orleans one. If you look at that one, it's got like 600 people signed up for it or something like that. It's absolutely off the hook, as is New York. So
yeah, they closed the registration.
yep. Yeah. And that's one of the things. And so this is an interesting thing that we're looking at here. So what we're looking at is an app that was built by Unlock Labs, but the technology under it is powered by Unlock Protocol. But anybody could build an event app like this because, again, that technology and that infrastructure is all open.
Right. I see here, it looks like they actually did lunch. They did a lunch today. The one I'm going to tonight in Mexico City is a dinner pizza day.
Nice.
So no, really, really cool. I think this is like just like recapping this global pizza party thing. And we were just talking about this before we started the podcast. Is not sure, this probably some sort of record with like the most amount of coordinated events around something like this in Web3 across the world. I mean, just the decentralization of it too. If you look at it, like it's just, definitely great global coverage. Like this is amazing.
Well, yeah, and the interesting thing in the way, and massive tip of the hat to Snacks and the entire PizzaDAO, is really setting this thing up and cracking the code on how to do these things in a decentralized manner. And it is, again, pure community and purely community driven. It's give the tools, give the education, give the support when needed. But we didn't set up, neither the PizzaDAO team nor the Unlock Labs team, we did not set up these 200 events. We set up the infrastructure. We literally and figuratively set the table, gave the guides of how to do things, and then let the community run with it. And they set up their own events. Yep. We got a couple of questions of, hey, how do I do this? Hey, I want to change that. But the fact that 90% of these probably spun up in the last week or the last month, and probably 80% in the last week is a testament to, if you can put the right Lego bricks out there, and again, you can get that right ethos going, then folks can do just amazing things and build communities. And this is one of the other, you're talking about sort of big, trends and technologies and such. This movement from the mediated, centralized, global town square types of things that we had, that actually kind of worked for a while with, let's call it early Twitter, now really fragmenting out into group chats and Telegram channels and all of these distributed things that are very purpose built, that we are all sort of context switching behind. When we were at FarCon, one of the things I think that team at Warpcast and Farcaster have really cracked the code on is the phrase they keep coming back to is what they're trying to create are cozy corners. So they are trying to create these little online nooks where the right people, be it 3 people or 300 or 30, can get together and connect around whatever their shared emotion or whatever their shared passion is. Those are the things that we seem to, have drifted away from, but I think we're getting back to.
Totally. And if like looking at that map all across the world too, if you could imagine any protocol that's trying to incentivize builders to run nodes and become more decentralized, something like that would really get them going. If
Yep,
they could grow and scale their community to be that, like, builders across the world like that, global. I mean, just incredible feat. So pretty cool. I'm pretty excited to get some pizza tonight.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And they've got, and similarly, part of that whole global pizza party ethos is sharing in that joy and just sharing in the fun of hanging out with, again, maybe it's half a dozen folks, maybe it's 200, but it's not 20,000. It's actual human connection between the folks who are sitting around, a table, stuffing some pie in their face, which is a good thing.
Yeah, totally. Well, awesome. I don't really see any kind of questions come through or anything. If you've got any questions, feel free to drop them in right now. I think one note of something that happened to me just within this last week that I thought I would throw out there is I've been doing a lot of community research across like tech stacks and different tools. And actually I can even briefly show a little bit of this. And if you want to see some of this, feel free to reach out and, DM me. But like this is Arbitrum, the blue box is their Discord, the orange is their website, the green is their Twitter. And looking at all the different like techs and tool stacks that they're using and how they kind of integrate with each other, what they're doing to kind of navigate people down the community funnel. Monad, like they're doing such amazing things with like driving like a very cult-like community, and how they've empowered them too is like they have their own internet, meme generator. Where you can actually make memes with their like
Nice.
mascot and stuff and then share it on socials. It's pretty wild. But like, as I was doing a lot of this research, I was flipping through all sorts of different communities very quickly. Alio, Chainlink was really great. I love what they're doing with like their grant stack and whatnot. But anyways, I was moving pretty quickly and I was using like I have a couple wallets. It's always good to have a hot wallet in some sense.
Yep.
And in one of the communities, got a message from a Me6 bot saying, check out this campaign that like, Galaxy campaign, whatever. And I like went through a look at it and I'm like, oh, this is interesting. Like they're doing something to bring their community members doing this. So I was like, okay, click like the connect wallet thing.
No.
And big shout out to Wallet Guard because I was just going so fast, like through these different tabs, had so many tabs open. And that's like the danger. That's like the message you got to put out there. It's like slow down. And the Galaxy site was like one letter different, right? And Wallet Guard popped up and was like, "Are you sure you want to sign this transaction? You're going to give access and like all these things." So shout out to the Wallet Guard team there. And then I rejected. I was like, "Oh yeah, don't want to sign that. You're right." So a little recommendation from just a few days going deep into community research mode and flying through different wallet connects maybe a little too quickly.
Yep.
One, slow down, and then two, like really helpful to grab a Chrome extension like Wallet Guard, where they basically give you a little explanation before you sign any contract, and they tell you what's happening. And they're like, they throw the warnings like, hey, this domain was created 2 days ago. This, they show all these different warning signs, like 5 warning signs pop up, and I'm like, oh yeah, whoops, definitely wrong one.
Yep. The one that I've been getting a lot is you get a DM and they're like, "Oh, hey, I'm a journalist at publication X working on a Web3 story and would love to feature you all." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, that sounds great." And then you do a couple of the back and forths, and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, yeah. So we're going to do it, and we're going to do it on Microsoft Teams, and Teams is going to ask for access to your Twitter, but that's just so it can bring your avatar in. Like, block, delete. I don't think so. And that's a particular similar scam I've seen a lot of. So if you've got somebody in your DMs saying the reporter from any publication, yeah, and they're like, oh yeah, no, check my bio, I'm legit. I'm like,
yeah, it's like, especially with AI, with technology, sure unlocks like a lot of amazing things, but it's also unlocking gateways for scammers to get a little more powerful. So
yeah,
you got to raise your borders a little bit, your boundaries, and just be a little tuned in, slow down, think about things a little bit more. And yeah, I think that's a really great way to kind of end off, is like keeping security top of mind for everybody,
yep,
and safety. So yeah, I really
absolutely.
appreciate you coming on, Chris. This was super fun. We'll have to do it again at some point. And yeah, is there any last kind of community strategy advice or thoughts you'd want to leave with anyone watching?
No, just I wanted to thank you and the CoUnity squad for the conversations that we've had, and thanks for the invitation. If folks do have questions, obviously, around community stuff, reach out to Dan. If you have questions around Unlock, you can hit me up at Carfi on pretty much any of the things, or unlock-protocol.com is the website, and at Unlock Protocol on I'm still going to call it Twitter, on that particular app. Although we're doing a lot more on Warpcast and Farcaster in the decentralized part of the world these days.
Yeah, if you're not on Firecaster, if you haven't downloaded Warpcast yet and got into it, it's definitely worth it. The activity there is picking up. It's pretty exciting. Just the ecosystem itself with what's being built and the opportunities that exist there. So
Yeah,
definitely recommend checking it out.
awesome,
Sweet. All right. Thanks again, Chris. We'll catch you later.
cool. Thanks, Dan.
All right.